They used to muck about quite a lot on sessions, but not excessively, not as much as some groups would have done. And they were generally very professional and very good on sessions. And I used to like working with them because, they were very professional the way they went about it, really. And they used to do good sessions for me, and they cared about the sessions and used to take an interest in them. I once had to tick off John Lennon because we had a break for him to go. He wanted to go to the toilet, and when he came back, I looked out in the studio, and he had this toilet roll in his hand, and he was showing it to Paul, and I could hear what he was saying. And he said, "Look, it's got BBC on it, property of the BBC." And I went, and I thought, they've nicked a toilet roll from the loo. So I went out with a straight face, and I said, "Excuse me, have you just taken that?" And he said, "Yes, I'm sorry." And he said, "I'm sorry, it's more than I can't let you do this, it's more than my job's worth." A dead straight face. And and they didn't know whether I was serious or not, but he gave it back to me. And I kept it afterwards. I forgot to give it back to him and tell him I was only joking. But I've still got that toilet roll, and it's still got property of the BBC on it.
I mean, you detect, obviously a great deal of affection between you and the Beatles developed over those years.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that a wee bit?
Particularly with George and John, actually. Well, sometime in the 70s, late 70s, I think it was, John Lennon did an Old Grey Whistle Test interview with Bob Harris, I think it was, and Tony King, he was in New York at the time when he did it. He must have done it over the satellite. And next day, Tony King, his personal manager at the time, phoned me at home and said, "Did you see the interview last night with John?" So I said, "Yeah." So he said, "What did you think of it?" I said, "I thought it came over very well." So he said, "Will you do us a favour? Will you tell John that? Because he thinks it didn't come over very well and he's worried about it. And he thinks that people in the UK wouldn't have liked it very much." So I said, "Oh no, it was great." And he said, "If I give you his home address, would you drop him a note?" And he said, "Don't type it, just do it by hand. Drop him a note and tell him what you've just told me." So I said, "Yeah, okay." And I sent him a note saying, "Dear John, blah, blah, blah. Thought it came over very well." And when he got the letter, when he saw Tony King, he said, "Tony, you never guess who I had a letter from?" So he said, "No." So he said, "I had a letter from Bernie Andrews about the Old Grey Whistle Test interview." And then he said, "Fancy him remembering me." But I know the way he meant it. He meant it in a way that I would have remembered him work-wise, and thought about sort of writing. And Tony obviously hadn't told him that he'd sort of tipped me off about that he was worried about it. But he wrote me a lovely letter back, John, saying, "Thank you very much for the letter," and it brought a lump to my throat, of which I do not know. Signed Winston O'Boogie, which was his normal signature.